Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series The Nature of Predators Book 2. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 27. Memory Transcription Subject, Tassie Bison Alien Liaison. Date Standardized Human Time, May 14th, 2160. While Dustin's kind had hardly looked like ferocious predators, Kaisel had quite the intimidating stature. His teeth were visibly poking out of his elongated snout, serrated fangs that could eviscerate a bison in a flash of feathers if he so desired. The forward-facing eyes were narrowed to slits, which left him with a perpetual scowl on his face. The grey hide of scales seemed rougher than gravel and coated his entire body. Back to the powerful hind legs tailored to leaping at prey and a lashing tail with spiked protrusions. He towered over even Naltor, who was from the largest bison subspecies, despite the fact that the reptile was hunched forward as he stalked ahead. All the while, claws like sabers pointed at us from his raised forepaws. Had I not known the Oxal's gruesome history, I wouldn't have judged a fellow sapien for being fearsome. I might have appreciated Kaisel's unique adaptations and expressed my usual bundle of enthusiasm to learn about his culture. However, this was a species that spent centuries rounding up fellow sapiens. Starvation alone didn't excuse that. Whatever Onzo might think, humanity left risks and isolation without further remediation, for reasons I couldn't understand. I'd heard what Dustin said about seeing the best in others and trying to build something better from history's dark pages, but how could any of those things seem possible with these people-eaters? Why would bisons want these creatures out of the quarantine any more than the rest of the galaxy? Onzo is much too clever to assume that we can be played like ice chimes. He must know there's nothing they can say that'll change my perspective, and that we want nothing to do with the Oxal. The Federation involvement mentioned by the Yodel didn't make sense either. With how staunch their anti-predator stance was, and them being at the root of the Oxal's supposedly forced diet, why would the Federation want their citizens to be turned into livestock? Onzo claimed that it suited their narrative, but I couldn't even begin to understand the implications of that. So many alien regimes had been beyond insane. They cared so little for life, and took their villainy to the extreme. Kaisel was from one of those two factions behind the terrible things I'd learned in the stars, and I found myself itching to rip his excuses to shreds. While we needed aid and wanted to send a message to the Fed remnant faction, it was beneath us to hold a conversation with a monster. It's excellent to meet you, fellow hunter. The humans are wily, but there are still leaf lickers. Kaisel's voice was a low rumble, with hissing sounds that accompanied certain consonants. You must have heard awful things about us. I know that they have a tendency to mention us only as the ones who had sapient cattle and no empathy. Naltor cast a brazen stare back at the Oxal, rooted in front of me as a shield. What else is there to mention if that's the truth? We could always wrap this up early. I don't care for long conversations, so I won't dawdle. We're a solitary species. That doesn't always mean a lack of empathy. It so happens that our government culled anyone with effective emotions as defective. That's how you get a race of sociopaths, bisons. You either are one, or you play along as one to survive, or you die. The Oxal Dominion celebrated cruelty, and its leaders wanted to remain a dwarf power. You're telling me that your government systematically murdered anyone who exhibited empathy? Any sane species would overthrow such madman long before you got to that point, I spat. There was an entire war being fought over Batman's ideas when the Federation arrived, bearing gifts, until they dosed us with meat allergy serum. Do you know what a horrific death that is? When you can't eat the only food your species can consume, there's a reason we hate them. It's the same reason authoritarians took control, even seized it as an opportunity. I believe that Seer may have a better idea about how alien attacks change a society. Zulk raised a flipper in protest. Don't compare yourselves to us. We didn't start murdering our own, or eating people. Naltor can call us savages all he likes, but we did nothing but try to protect our homes and match their strength. Wrong, Naltor countered. I'll explain to you fully how effect the Desir are later. You're on your own brand of effect, but you aren't like these aliens. I'd love to hear how this allergy serum turned you from happy carnivores to people eaters. It doesn't explain how authoritarians consolidated power. My confidence grew the more I heard, compelling me to provide a rebuttal to the Oxal's defense. They can decide to use it to their advantage all they want, but that doesn't explain why a whole fecking populace would just go along with sapient cattle farms. That didn't make you okay with it.
It's more that Batman pushed us to have no alternative. In the same breath as the killer serum, they tried to wipe out the enemy's nation's cattle between the two attacks. It could have starved them out, Kaisel growled. That bioweapon took out theirs too, and that opened the door to a desperate solution, which only they'd be willing to carry out. They blamed the Federation for the cattle virus, bringing a level of hatred that left us to ensure that they reaped their consequences.
You talk so callously about what you've done. What kind of species would even think about eating food that talks, capturing them from their homes and shoving them in farms?
When you're hungry enough, true thinking stops. Late-stage starvation makes anything food. That's why they kept us in that way. It was only with both the Federation and the Dominion gone that we could change.
It's difficult to beat a system. It's near impossible to beat one that you were born into, Onzo spoke up, from where he'd been quietly observing us.
The Orcs all became a shell of their former selves, because they made all the worst choices. Yet they did a lot of good in the war that gets overlooked. Species like the Dirtian and the Doser exist because the rebels stepped in alongside our efforts. They proved that they could work with Yodel ships.
When they're deprived of food, they become animals without higher thought. You heard that admission, and you want them serving alongside us, I demanded.
Tassie, those are extreme cases of starvation. Anyone can be driven mad without their basic needs met. I'll let you in on a secret. However intelligent we might become, we're all animals. Predator, prey, two sides of the same coin.
Sapiens can be better than that. We always have control and agency.
Kaisel smacked his tail on the porch. Whatever you might think of us, the Oxal saved Earth. If you like the humans, you can thank us for their planet not being a ball of rubble.
Wait, what? The humans staved off total extinction with help from the loathed carnivores. Why would the Dominion protect Earth? And how did their allies not turn on them? When we get slammed for being linked to the Greys in any capacity. While I was still trying to be resistant to any sympathetic thoughts, out of basic courtesy for Aliska, I was shaken that Dustin left out some important context about the Oxal. It had never been brought to my attention that the Federation, who was supposedly fighting a war against them, were teaming up with them the whole time, and misleading the public. The fact of the Oxal being starved systematically had also been omitted, making it sound as if they were looking for sapient lunches as soon as they made first contact. Humanity was also happy to construct a tale like Earth's survival was a miracle, rather than owing their existence to a nightmarish carnivores. I couldn't imagine what state the galaxy would be in without the Terrans, so I could feel a little gratitude if Kaisel's kind saved him.
Dustin failed to mention that, Naltor sighed.
The Oxal's leader's nostrils flared with annoyance.
The humans don't like to admit that they needed help from the unsavory fleet such as ours. But it is true. We have always been willing to come to the defense of non-herbivores, something that would make us a good ally to you, from a pragmatic standpoint.
We wouldn't turn away aid from any source if Alsh is attacked by exterminator loons again, Zulk responded. I am not ready to bring trouble down on our heads by signing a pact with the galaxy's most hated faction. We mistrust outsiders to begin with. So I am not sure how we would trust anyone with your checkered past.
Any historian worth their meat salts will also tell you how important the rebellion fighting back against the Betterment regime is. There are people who hated what we'd become, and I'm proud to say that I joined their cause as soon as possible. A fight for peace and a better legacy that you will not find so repugnant. The collective strives to end a culture of cruelty and bring satiety to all. Part of our ideal future is making alien friends.
You want to be our friends just because we're obligate carnivores? I accused.
That is the primary reason, Tassie.
There has never been another species like us. Who would we have more in common with on a biological level? Whose world and culture could we perhaps find a place in? Besides, you'll be an eye-opening test of the SC. If they cannot accept you, then I know they'll never accept us.
That's part of why I want to help the Bisons. Onzo pinned his ears back, bushy tail stiffening as he spoke. I'm not convinced that the Coalition members have shaken off their Federation roots altogether. There's many that just make a mental exception for humans. I think the technocracy would be foolish to make an alliance of convenience with the anti-carnivals.
My cooperation with you should be proof for the Bisons that I care much more for fighting spirit than diet. The Yodel are anything but weak, so we've gotten along well. You didn't care that the wider SC won't even speak to us.
The wider SC called us primitives and looked down on us. They laughed as the Federation wrecked our home. I wonder why we don't give a feck what they think.
Nalta gave me a look. This is the same SC Tassie wants to join, for some reason. Why do we care what they think of our war?
Because we need them. Humanity's trying to pull the galaxy forward, as impossible as that appears, I retorted.
A hiss emanated from Kaisel's chest. We've done everything they asked of us, but my people are starting to feel abandoned. We won't stay in isolation much longer. If they want us to better ourselves, then they need to treat us like allies, and let us join their team, without acting ashamed of us. We don't want the future to pass us by.
It would be an excellent way to leave the predator-prey schism behind once and for all, if the Sapien Coalition could see the Arxel aren't monsters. That rips the foundation out of the so-called proof for the Federation's dogma, Onzo declared. I thought a chat with Kaisel might rip away your misconceptions. Bisons have a chance to be the catalyst for true unity, leaving the war and its divisions behind.
That's a nice ideal, but you can't be sure it'll be that simple.
Zolk tilted his head, a skeptical glimmer in his eyes.
Let's say that we got into the Coalition. What happens if they don't listen to us? With our newness and distinct lack of credibility. I've taken the liberty of strengthening our military to a respectable fleet size once more. We don't want trouble, but let's just say that we're done with quarantine. It would be better for everyone if that was us friends. Let us go about our business with those who are ready to move on.
I shifted on my feet. It's only been a few decades since the last war, and you're willing to go back to battle?
We will not fire the first shots. That's not my wish. I'd rather you convince the SC that we deserve a second chance. It would be worth your while, and you'd have an ally you don't have to worry about scaring. I'll accept gradual concessions from the Leaf Flickers, but we've been left out of everything far too long.
Define worth our while. Will you give us military technology? Naltor squawked. That's what we need, Kaisel, to increase the Brana's standing so that we aren't entirely at their mercy.
The Collective would happily provide ships and weapon blueprints in return. As Onzo could tell you, that's the only way they won't view you as primitives. Strength. Your own ships will mean that they can't dismiss you or bar you from the stars on a whim.
Interest shone in Zolk's eyes.
Having your own starship fleet would be a game-changer. If those Ghost Exterminators return, we can rise to meet them. However, there's no way to know you're good for it before we uphold our part of the deal. We'll earn your trust this year. We're not the self-serving species we were 20 years ago. We can work with others as a civilized force. Give us a chance to prove it. Let us bury what the Dominion did and make a new name for ourselves.
Do they even deserve a second chance after what they've done? Whatever Kaisel says about fighting back, it was their whole society. They're willing to get in the way by force, so they can't have changed that much. We'll consider it, I said. I can't pretend your history didn't exist, but I know I don't want any more death and war. I want what's best for Evrana, and the SC won't give our problems their full attention if they're all fighting you. The Yodel politician flicked his hair in agreement. That's all we ask. In any case, I have a plan to get you a trial role on the SC. I'll tell them, if there's any way to show you're divided, it'll be by giving you a single vote amid a war. It's up to you to prove them wrong. So I even have a chance to get you a permanent spot.
We just need to get in the door, despite the war. Every faction has extended a friendly flipper towards the aliens. Even his,
Naltor gestured to Zolk, who scoffed in response. We know we have to get this right, even as we're fighting amongst ourselves.
The Tasia sighed.
I wouldn't put up with a cloak of beaks like you if I didn't.
Thank you, Hansa, I interceded. We appreciate the introductions and the aid. I think it's best that we get going before someone does see us all colluding. We know how this would go over.
Kaiser snorted.
How dare anyone talk to the Oxel? That attitude is exactly what needs to change with the Coalition, and why we don't trust them to look out for us. Carnival still can't get a fair shake, even with our dark history. I'll certainly be watching your experience with interest.
We're going to make this work for us. I won't give up on being part of the galactic community and seeing Bison's welcome as equals. Before you do anything rash, let's see whether they can come around to us.
I can be a little patient. Just don't take too long. Goodbye, Tassie and friends.
Still huddled behind Naltor, I turned towards the vehicle we'd arrived in, eager to get away from the Oxor leader. I only breathed a sigh of relief once the car was speeding away from Anza's home. The politician must believe the reptilians had changed, if he was letting one stay in his dwelling without any backup. I wasn't sure what my companions made of Kaisel, but I was convicted over every explanation he offered. Aligning ourselves with them didn't seem like a prudent move. It'd validate prejudices about us accepting their crimes. Then again, the alternative was a fight that could pick up where the unthinkable centuries-long war had left off. That would strengthen the grudges against carnivals that Bisons would have to face. The dilemma certainly wasn't what I expected when I got the invite to Lian, but what mattered was that the Yodel had a plan that he thought would get us a brief stint with the Sapien Coalition. That brought me a giddy rush, since I'd thought our chances might be dead in the waters with the war raging. Once I got myself into the forum, I was going to make every connection I could to ensure that we stayed there for good. End of chapter. I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Vidmori, 050, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.